Today, I'm going to teach you exactly how to train your mental fitness. And 15 years ago, I was in a completely different place. I was really struggling mentally, if I'm honest. I genetically did not inherit the mentally fittest set of genes. I was nothing special. I definitely suffered from anxiety and depression as a kid, and those were all limiting factors. But over the last 15 years, I've taught myself, discovered, been taught by others, researched how to train my mental fitness so I can be a high performer. I've become a Royal Marines Commando. I run a successful business. I've got an amazing wife and an amazing daughter. I'm training for an ultramarathon. I've done all these things, and ultimately now I'm on this journey of teaching people how to become high performing through mastering their mental fitness. I've trained over 1,000 high performers, from special forces operators to 6 and 7 and 8 figure business owners. I have coached elite athletes. This process applies to everyone. That's the key thing that I want you to get from this. Like, this isn't specific to you. That so often the therapy world and the mental health world, which we'll get into, is telling you that it's mystical whether this stuff works, but it's sets and reps. Like, it's a programmable, efficient, effective methodology, and that's what I'm going to transfer to you, because I figured out for myself how to upgrade my mental performance, and I'm going to tell you how to do the same today too. So this slide here, I'm going to teach you how to upgrade your mental performance. Yes, that's true. Put more succinctly and more intentionally, I'm going to teach you how to expand your capacity to do difficult things, so that not only are you suffering less when you're pushing harder, so you can find more freedom and flow, but you can actually do harder things too. You can expand your capacity to do difficult things. And that is what I've specialized in for the last 10 years of coaching. The problem is, so often our own mindset is in this is the victim of, you can't see the wood for the trees, right? You're so immersed in your thoughts, you're so immersed in your conscious experience that you can't tell whether this is normal. You can't tell even what the problem is because you're so immersed in it. I have countless calls with people saying various iterations of, I don't know what the problem is, but I know there's a problem. Especially 6 and 7 figure business owners. They hit a level of success, and then ultimately they stumble and struggle because they don't know what the next level of success actually looks like. So I'm guessing you have learned to, or tried at some point, to improve your, air quotes, mental health. Okay, and there's lots of reasons why this approach doesn't work. I think number one is that, and most importantly, is it doesn't target specifically the sets and the reps that you need to follow in order to create the growth that you need. So just like I'm going to change the exercises I give you in a physical training routine to create a different outcome depending on your goals, your current position, it's crazy that saying everyone should have therapy, or that everyone should meditate, or that everyone should read such and such book. It depends on where you're at. So there's no specificity. That's why you can try all these skills. You can try all these, these tactics, and they don't work for you. Sure, they work for some people, but they have a completely different background, skill set, problem, goal, focus, genetic stature. So that's completely different. The other problem is that I know there's plenty of wonderful therapists and coaches and psychologists and experts within the mental health world, but way too often, especially for guys, it's this, and for the language around therapy is typically geared around women, and guys don't work in that world. And also, obviously, not all women are the same. And with that in mind, those who want to pursue aggressive growth are typically guys, and some women too. So you kind of see how this applies, and then there's nuance. There's too much endless self-reflection. That's the point that I'm getting at. Like, it's this endless introspection of what's going on inside me, as opposed to what can I do to actually grow. And the final thing is, I just think the phrase mental health doesn't resonate with anyone. Like, who was the last person that got really excited about building mental health? No one. That's why I use the term mental fitness, because you want to increase your capacity, just like your physical capacity to do difficult things. And that is what success looks like. That's what growth looks like. And that's why mental health doesn't always work. So this piece here, I really want to kind of frame as the master kind of slide of this presentation. And this is all about neuroplasticity and myelination. And these are two ways that our brain reinforces what we're teaching it to do. So every time you teach your brain, or you perform a rep of something, you think a certain thought, you perform a certain behavior, you feel a certain feeling, that circuit that is associated with that, the parts of your brain that light up, will connect more strongly and connect to the other areas around it, so that there's more kind of inroads going, and there's stronger roads going to that part of your brain, so it becomes more likely to be activated in the future in similar circumstances. Your brain is constantly craving efficiency. It's constantly craving the path of least resistance. So what you train it to do, it will do more efficiently and try to do in similar situations. So if your thoughts are, I can never get this, that's what you're going to think. If you're always thinking, I don't know what my next move is, that is what you're going to think. If you're always thinking, I'm stuck, that's what will be there. Whatever your frame of your internal state is, that is what is going to be there. If you're constantly thinking, I'm at the limit, that is what you think. Same with behaviors. If you're constantly performing behaviors that do not grow your experience of the world, that is what you will struggle with. So what I'm thinking about here is, can you put the reps into thinking differently? Can you perform the sets and reps that create the change, that myelinate different pathways? So this is where the neurons in your brain, so your brain cells, get wrapped in something called myelin sheath, which is essentially like I can't really show you, but this piece of rubber here around a wire insulates it, somewhat parallel to that. It wraps around it, but it makes the connection basically move quicker, so that there's less effort associated with it, so it doesn't take as long. The other thing that happens is the networks around that part of that neuron, they spread out and they connect to other neurons, so that it's more likely to be integrated in future behavior. And you have a neuron associated for basically everything. The researchers have found a Jennifer Aniston neuron and cluster of neurons, and similarly, now you're watching this, you will have a Tom Foxley cluster of neurons. You will have me represented in one small aspect of your brain. Now, if I'm not there consistently, if you don't see me consistently, that will dissipate, and your brain will kind of go, okay, we don't need that, we're going to repurpose it for something else. Or it might just be there very distantly in the back. Whereas if you, for example, my coaching clients, they see me the whole time, they engage in conversations with me consistently, that means that the cluster of neurons associated with Tom Foxley becomes more and more and more prevalent. So what we want to do is effectively train your neurons in your brain to be connected to the kind of thoughts that we want to have more consistently. Okay, we want to reinforce these networks, these patterns of behavior. Think about it like if there's a big open meadow in front of you with long grass around you, and you walked the same path over and over and over again, just up and down, that would be the path that became entrenched and easiest to walk. You'd push down all the grass around you so that the path would have less resistance. If you wanted to find another path, it would be hard work. You would struggle to do it. It'd be very difficult for you. You'd have to push through very deep grass to get there. And that's kind of a good thing. Like, that means we're stressing ourselves, we're learning new skills. And just like with physical fitness, the more stress that you encounter or you put on your own system, the more adaptation you're going to make. So the few things to remember there: you're constantly rewiring new circuits. Your brain is looking for efficiency. You can give it the new system to think with. You can upgrade your internal operating system. And secondly, the more stress you encounter, the better. Okay, that's not me saying you should struggle. It's me saying that you want to create mental stress. You want to do things that challenges you, because your brain will adapt to that so that it becomes more beneficial in the long run. So I want you in this to be as skeptical as you possibly can be. I want you to doubt what I say. I want you to be scientific and rigorous and skeptical about this. But I'm going to make a few promises to you, because I, in your situation, watching this, would be doubtful too. What I'm promising has been promised by many other people, and on the internet, especially these days, there are good guys and bad guys. There are con artists, and there are people who are just who know I see them the whole time because I'm in this world, who know very, very little, or who've even bought one of my courses and now teaching this at scale, but they have no idea of how to actually implement it. So I want you to be skeptical about what I say. Go and check what I say, understand it for yourself in more detail. But this is my experience, right? This is what I've learned works for me, and it's what I've learned works for over 1,000 clients. So a few promises. I'm not going to have you pouring your hearts out. Like, you don't necessarily need that. Some people, very few people do, especially kind of high performers. You don't need to be self-therapizing in this. I will give you nothing that I haven't researched thoroughly and found scientific proof for, as strong as proof can possibly be. And this is all about sets and reps. All of this is, you will know what to do about this kind of exercise in the future. All of this, like I said, has been tested on me. I'm very selfish in this. I test it all on myself first, because I want to improve my life as rapidly as possible and reach mastery and high performance in all domains. So I want this to work for me, and it's all been tested on myself first, then in beta tests or case studies with clients, and then brought out to my wider clients. And the processes in here all work. It starts in academic study, goes into me, gets tested through me, gets tested in a wider audience, and then puts these sets and reps into, or it becomes established as sets and reps that actually create transformation and growth within people. All of this has been tested in the real world. Like, you know that phrase, I can't remember who said it. It's probably Franklin, or been attributed to Franklin, something like that. But it's not the critic who counts; it's the man in the arena. Beautiful essay that's been written. But this applies to whatever you need to be better at, whether it's in your business currently, whether it's with your relationships, whether it's with your training, whatever you're seeking high performance in, this applies. I think the struggle with mental performance, mental health, whatever's going on in your mind, is that you're typically offered 3 paths, especially guys in the world, but high performers in general are offered 3 paths. One is the Gabor Mate, who's a fantastic therapist and not necessarily scientist, but therapist in there, and author too. He's done a hell of a lot, especially in psychedelic research and all kinds of things, and reframed the situation. But his perspective is that basically everything's a trauma, and I don't think that's useful. He's basically saying you're traumatized, you're broken, you can't be fixed, or you need to be fixed. And I'm saying that you don't need to be fixed. You need to increase your capacity to do difficult things. So that's one path that's offered to you. The other one is just like have this false machismo of just like suck it up, big boy, and get on with it. Now, I've been in the forces, the Royal Marines specifically, which is a fairly elite arm of the British Armed Forces. That just bury it down does not work. And then the final thing is just like achieve success and then ignore this, and then hopefully it will all go away. And we all know those people who are outwardly very successful but inwardly absolutely destroyed. But there is a 4th path, and that 4th path is to train your mental fitness, to see it as an expandable capacity. So my definition of mental fitness is the trainable capacity to deploy your full range of skills and resources under pressure. Another way to say that is to increase your capacity to do difficult things. Trainable capacity is underlined for a reason, because this is a trainable capacity. It's very different from personality. A lot of psychology is based on that, because this is all about a trainable capacity. Like you can increase this. It's not fixed. It's not who you are. It's all of this. The research this is based on, these attributes are trainable within you. Actually, before I get to that slide, let's go back. I want to tell you about the story of a client. We'll call A for anonymity. That's not her name. She's not anonymity. Her name, but we will call her A because her name did begin with an A. Now, I was on a call with her very, very early on when she was thinking about signing up with me, and she was just saying I can't handle anymore. And she's an equestrian rider. She's got a dog. She's got a startup business. At this time, it was a startup. She was married, needs to pay attention to her husband, trained, she's an athlete. She's doing all these things. And she was like, I can't take any more. It's like there can't fit any more in here. And this image came to mind of a gas canister. And it's like you filled the canister up to the maximum capacity. And what you can feel as stress is that structure groaning and creaking. It's like, I can't take any more. Now, the mental health world says, take stuff out of there. Do less. Try and achieve more. I say there's a better way to do things, which is expand your capacity to do difficult things. Now, if you are not seeking an exceptional life, then definitely take things out. It's right for some people to take things out. But most of the people who watch this, most of the people this resonates with, most of the people who ultimately end up working with me are thinking, I want to expand my capacity to do difficult things. I want to put more stuff in here eventually and handle all of this with more ease and freedom and space. And you can do that. And that is the trainable capacity. It's the expandable capacity. So one of the things that Royal Marines, like myself, enjoy doing, especially when they're in the Royal Marines, or apparently enjoy doing, is they like yomping. And yomping is it's miserable. Yomping means basically carrying a lot of weight a long way, and usually very fast. Kind of similar to the army's tabbing, but yomping is heavier and further and quicker. Little jibe at the army there. But you get given a bunch of stuff. At the beginning of training, you pick up this berg and you think it's heavy and it's like 25 kilos. You're like, whoa, I can't carry this anywhere near the distance that I need to be able to. And then you get to the point in training where you pack all this gear in and your bergen is kind of buckling, and you can see almost see the stitches struggling to contain all the stuff. You've got all your normal gear and you've got a radio in there or a bunch of GPM G-Link, and it gets to this point where you need two of your mates to get it on your shoulders. And I was 70 kilos, 73, 74 kilos in training, something like that. These bergens 50, 55, sometimes for short periods when you got a bunch of water in there, 60 kilos. So it's most of my body weight on my shoulders for hours at a time, days at a time. But that's your job as a Royal Marines Commando, is to shoulder that bergen, carry that stuff. And if you want to be a high performer, you have to be able to handle that load. Same thing with your mental load. You have to be able to handle that load. Now, it'd be nice, right, if we could just take some of the stuff out of the bergen, shake it out, hide it, as some people in training try to do, hide the belongings around a tree, just get rid of it, or even bury stuff. People were burying their food rations to try and make this lighter. Inevitably, they didn't get through training, usually because they passed out from hunger. But it's inevitable that we want to get lessen the load on our shoulders. It gets to the point where you literally has holes rubbed in your skin. Your shoulders are in agony. Your neck is just, it is awful. But to become an elite performer, you can't ask for a lighter load. You've got to ask for broader shoulders. You've got to increase your capacity. So the way that Royal Marines increase their capacity to carry load is they give you steadily increased progressions and increase the demand on you through sets and reps. It's exactly the same thing in a mental capacity too. We just need to increase your capacity to do difficult things, to carry to carry a heavier bergen, to carry a heavier backpack. This is something you can train to do. It's something that I have trained myself to do and trained plenty of others to do too. The important thing to say is that this may come across as you want to be mentally stronger, which is part of it. But this isn't about just grizzing it out. That's a military phrase that means just suffering through this. This isn't about just suffering through this, because it does not work. You want to be a complete athlete. Just being strong won't allow you to carry the bergen very far, or having a huge aerobic capacity. You have to become a complete athlete that has both endurance and mobility and strength and power and coordination and all the other attributes. And so you become a complete athlete, and the same applies to mental fitness too. You want to become a complete athlete. You don't just be the type of person that can just grizz things out, because we all know that doesn't work. You want to become a balanced athlete. One of those people is Eddie Hall. Or sorry, one person to draw an analogy from is Eddie Hall. This is him deadlift. I think this is, I can't be asked to add up those plates, but I think this was his 500 kilo deadlift world record. A man who deadlifted so much that his eyes began to fall out of his skull. Insane freak of a man. Incredible. Like, ridiculously strong human being. Like, so impressive. But also, when he hit this deadlift, or his 500 kilo deadlift, he couldn't play with the sun. He couldn't run up the stairs without getting out of breath. And the mental equivalent of this is he could do very difficult things. So you can kind of push very, very hard. You can extract a lot. You can be very assertive and aggressive, but you have no ability to be flexible, to balance yourself. We need that. You have no endurance. We need that balance. We need that complete athlete mentality. The next example of this is Chris Froome, who's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum here, and incredible athlete, right? He is the human lung. He just, like, his VO2 max, his aerobic capacity, his resting heart rate, all those kind of things. It must have been insane at his peak. But put him under like a 60 kilo bench press, or put him near a deadlift bar, and he's going to suffer. Like, he's very specifically good at his one thing, but life is about high performance in all different areas. And to become a high performer, you need to be a balanced athlete, both physically and mentally. One time that this came to a head was when I just moved back from Canada. I had all my friends out in Canada. I had an amazing life out in Canada. I was outdoors ski mountaineering most weekends. I was probably the healthiest, the happiest I've ever been. My business was going pretty well at the time. I was obviously living with my then girlfriend. I proposed to her out there. She became my fiance. Had this incredible life set up. However, I moved back to the UK. Was very fortunate to move into my in-laws. That lasted, it was meant to be like 3 months. It lasted 18 months whilst we figured out where we wanted to live. And all during that time, I pushed down the emotions of the sadness, the loss, the grief that I was feeling, and also the anger at myself and the situation that I was in. I pushed it down the whole time, didn't let it out. And I was practicing this fake stoic mentality of, don't feel this, don't allow myself to suffer, because just like the Marcus Aurelius thing, like, just be like a he says, be like a promontory. And I think what he means, I think that translates as like a cliff in the sea. Be like a cliff in the sea with the waves crashing over you. In other words, don't move. Just allow the emotions to just smash into you, and you remain unmoved. That was a cool idea, but what that resulted in is me basically pouring all that emotion out through one hugely aggressive outburst, not at anyone, but that honestly scared my wife, as I was like packing everything into the van. And it took me months and months to recover. My business suffered because of it. My relationship suffered with it. My training suffered because of it, because I didn't have the emotional fitness at that point to process these emotions. And that's something that I will teach you. So what I'm saying there is, do not suppress your emotions. You need to learn how to engage with them, utilize them, and learn from them so you can develop emotional intelligence. Don't be a stoic, avoid suppression. I think about this mental health component as the 0 on this scale. It's basically it's usually health is defined as like an absence of illness or disease, and I think that's a pretty boring place to aim at being, like the mental health framework, and just an absence. And that's where a lot of people come to me working, is like, or to try and work with me, because it's like, well, I've got all these things and my life is fine, but it's not great. It's like, I know there's more to this. Is this all there is? I've worked so hard to get to this point in my life, but what is next? And I think that's a pretty boring, like, end goal to reach. Mental illness is usually the -5 to 0 piece. It's like the it's the part that says, Well, that's where anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, other mental health disorders that live. Okay, I don't think most people will be working in that who watch this, but it's worth considering. I think through sets and reps, what we do is we train our capacity, right? We build from 0 to 5, to 5 to 10, 10 to 100. And then what happens is you have a bracket that you operate in. 15 years ago, my bracket was probably between like -4 and 1. I had like a 5-point bracket or something like that. So my average days were like not very good. They're like a -1.5, something like that. However, through training and repetition, I've increased that bracket so that my bad days are probably like a -0.5. They're kind of I'm a bit grumpy, a bit miserable, but I'm never depressed like I used to be. And my good day is like maybe a 10. I don't know. It's an arbitrary number, right? So it's somewhere up there. But the key thing is you have a bracket too. And right now that bracket is constraining you. And if you're at the top end of your bracket where you are feeling like you're kind of like you're pushing your limits, but you're not getting any further, you can't move, you can't do more difficult things, like you are the limit, you are the bottleneck in your life, in your business, in your training. If you're feeling like that, then what that means is you are at your capacity. Like you are like hitting that limit, and that's what sucks about this. The other side could be that you are suffering so much, like, and it's not a fun place to be. But if we can shift your bracket up so that you can tolerate more difficulty, like, so you want to learn to tolerate more difficult situations, that's essentially what we're trying to do here, then you can do more difficult things, you can achieve more difficult things. Your job from this is basically, can you move the bracket up? Can we shift it up? Can we put the sets and reps in? I want to talk to you quickly about the School of Darkness, which is not from Harry Potter, but it's probably the most piss-taking name of a school ever. I think it's probably very non-PC, and I wouldn't be surprised if they'd changed the name of this since the early 2000s, which is when I think it was established. Now, this was all about teaching empathy to students, to teachers whose students were going to be blind. They had this test where we're going to put a blindfold on you for 5 days, and in those 5 days, you're going to have to navigate your normal life. You're going to have to learn to teach. You're going to have to do all these things. And that is going to give you some empathy, some understanding of what it's like for these kids to be blind, hence the School of Darkness. Some people were studying empathy and the changes happening in the brain. And they decided to scan these people's brains before and after these 5 days. What they found, which is fascinating, is over those 5 days, the visual cortex, the part of the brain that is responsible for processing the information that comes in through the eyes, stopped processing anything because it didn't need to, right? There's no information coming in through the eyes, or very, very little. And all that space, that unused territory became repurposed for something else. So these people, by the end of it, could use echolocation. They could understand what objects were in front of them from the sound coming back to them that were reverberating off them. They could identify things like motorbike models through the engine noise. And what happened, how that links to the visual cortex, is the visual cortex had started processing auditory and kind of touch info, so the information coming through their fingers. So people who read Braille basically see with their fingers. I know that sounds crazy, but that is what's happening. They're seeing the parts of, they're seeing the bumps, they're not feeling the bumps, so they are reading in the very true sense of the word. And if you've ever learned to do a complex movement, so actually, let me just back up one piece here. Just think about how stressful that was, how much stress that was on the body, on the brain, to not have that information and have to learn these new skills just in 5 days. So notice, A, how quickly that change can happen, but B, notice how much stress that must have created. The difficulty created the adaptation. And if you've ever learned to snatch a barbell or deadlift a barbell or perform complex gymnastics movements or anything like that, you will know that it's very difficult to begin with. It's very confusing. However, through efficiency and practice and sets and reps, you can learn to snatch a barbell efficiently, where it just feels like one movement eventually. Dmitry Klokov, the weightlifter, was kind of bemused when he started teaching beginners, because it's just one movement. You pick the bar up and put it over your head, whereas beginners, it's an utterly baffling environment and task to do. So I was basically, at one point in my business, I was getting very good results with people, but I had no idea how to conceptualize mental fitness. And honestly, from a marketing point of view, it was very difficult to convince people to sign up, because it was like, well, what's the actual change I'm going to get? How can I quantify this? And business numbers don't really transfer that well, because it's not just the mental performance, although it has a huge impact and there's outside factors. And because I'm really cool, I spent my Friday evening one week kind of diving into papers. I actually do it fairly frequently. And that's because I'm ultra cool, ultra nerdy. And I found this paper by Paula Robinson. It's her PhD thesis, Conceptualizing and Measuring Mental Fitness, a Delphi study. And in the Delphi study, what they do is they get a bunch of experts who know a lot about this concept from a variety of different areas, and between them, they aggregate a definition. So they come up with an understanding of, like, this is how we define mental fitness, and this is what Paula Robinson did. And within that, she came up with 4 quantifiable attributes of mental fitness, or components of mental fitness. And also she discussed the subscales, or the scales that could, psychological assessment tools that could be used to measure those. What I did is firstly, like, punch the air, because this is the goal that I'd been looking for years and years and years. And then I immediately went and put together this assessment tool called the Mental Edge Diagnostic. And the Mental Edge Diagnostic gives you an exact measure of exactly how mentally fit you are. It's the world's most accurate definition of mental fitness, and or assessment of mental fitness. And it's free to any 6 and 7 figure business owner who wants to try it out, and would go higher as well. So definitely try that. And I've got averages of how well people perform. I can put you against the averages and see how well you stack up. But there's 4 components. The thing I want you to get out of here is there's 4 domains of mental fitness. And like I said earlier, this is very different to like a Myers-Briggs or a Big 5 personality test, because those Big 5 personality tests, they inevitably, like, they feel as interesting to learn that stuff, right? You're like, oh, well, that's interesting. I've got all these letters that supposedly define me, but what do I actually do with it? And this is like, well, you can, no matter where you are now, whether you're in the first percentile, so 99 people in a room have more mental fitness with you, or the 99th percentile, you can increase your capacity. You can increase this mental fitness so you can do more difficult things, handle more stress. The first of these 4 domains is endurance. And this is your ability to keep on going, keep pushing, keep doing difficult things. The definition of this is basically keep going. Okay, that's, if I paraphrase that, it's your ability to keep going. And without it, you're going to really struggle with motivational challenges. You'll have these peaks and troughs, shiny object syndrome. Your mood will dictate your performance. It's a difficult place to be. But if you put in the reps, for example, emotional literacy and intelligence, and also understanding where you want to go, your endurance will increase. So there are sets and reps that increase these psychological assessment measurements of improving. You put them in, you improve as a mental athlete. That is a trainable skill. Second up, flexibility. This is more of like poise, balance, understanding where you are in space, not looking to the future, not looking to the past, but the adaptability, fluidity of your mental state rather than being like fixed and rigid. So without it, you commonly get this thing where I'm still mentally at work whilst I'm at home and I can't connect, but I'm also thinking about training when I'm at work. I'm not focused on where I want to be. I'm anxious. I'm distracted by a lot of things. If you put in the reps by training your ability to focus, like intentional focus training and unplugging, that is when you create growth here. Next piece, mental strength. Mental strength is I'm asserting myself over the world. I'm getting shit done. Mental strength is like the psychological engine, right? That provides clarity, confidence, and inner stability. Without it, your inner state is confusing. It's self-doubting. Like you go through depressive phases or behaviors, not psychological depression, but without it, it's linked to depressive phases. A lot of it is like when I find someone with very low strength, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I've got an untapped potential, and I'm not very clear on the outcome. I'm going to show you a slide now that comes up, nested goals. For those just listening, what this means is there's a series of goals here, or phrases that describe goals that we can have, from meaning and purpose as the ultimate top goal, all the way down to our daily objectives with short and long-term goals, our vision and our values in there. Ideally, these all need to be aligned, but most common is that either pieces aren't described in enough detail, or they're completely absent, or they're misaligned. So it's like I've internalized my father's values and I'm pursuing those, but really my meaning is somewhere completely else, and because of that there's conflict, and I can't assert myself over the world. So one thing I like to do is train people to put that in, like, so basically build out all those capacities, and that has a massive impact on the strength or mental strength. And then the final of these components is kind of I put an ambiguous photo up here on purpose, and I couldn't understand it at all, but it's structure. And it's basically the team support that you have, your ability to draw upon the relationships around you. And I couldn't understand this for years. Like literally years and years, I really struggled with this, for like, why would this work? And eventually I started thinking about, okay, well, why? Like what happens when we are in a team environment? Well, we're understood, and when we're understood and we're bonded to others, what's happening neurochemically? So what in the brain chemicals, like what's happening? And one of the things that's released is a neuromodulator called oxytocin. And one thing that oxytocin does is it allows you to unlearn old patterns. If you think back to the brain that's constantly trying to create new pathways, the other thing that's trying to do is pruning back old pathways that we're not using very much. And one of the things that helps us do that is oxytocin. So oxytocin helps us unlearn old patterns. And for years, I was stuck in this kind of like, I'm underperforming concept. It was like a new tier, but I was running against this thing where I couldn't quite unpick some old patterns that I won't quite go into here because it would just be boring for you actually. But I knew that I was not quite hitting this next level of performance. And then I had my daughter Skylar, and we used to have these things every morning whilst I'd be a hero and give my wife all of an extra hour and a half in bed, where I'd chuck Skylar on my shoulder and would have daddy-daughter dances. And those daddy-daughter dances were this moment of actually pure love, but pure bonding and connection. And over the duration, I still get those dances in when I can, even though she's just over 1 now, and she's less tolerant of being held for that long, wants to go do things and walk around. But I still get those moments of connection and utter love. And one of the reasons, I'm sure there's many reasons here, but I think one of the reasons why I allowed or found a way to unlearn those old patterns was from the amount of oxytocin in my bloodstream and surrounding my neural connections. So, structure, the last piece, the ability to draw strength from trusted, meaningful relationships that support psychological growth. And without that, you have blind spots, you've got these old patterns, you've got a build up of stress, you limit your own growth. And the best way to train that is not to have children, but to feel gratitude. The place I want to finish this is that with this example of ski touring. And if you've been ski touring, or if you haven't been ski touring, let's start there. If you haven't been ski touring, this is skiing, but you have bindings where your feet, your heels can lift up, and your toe pieces are clipped into your boots. And on the bottom of your skis, you have something called skins. And skins have basically a fur type thing on them, the synthetic fur. They used to be seal skins, but now they're synthetic. And you can brush up one way on them and it's smooth, but if you brush the other way, it sticks. And this is so you can walk uphill. And when you walk uphill, you don't slide backwards because the skins stick you. But you usually go in groups of like 4, 5, maybe 2, maybe solo if you're an utter mentalist and you don't worry about avalanche safety too much, or it's a very, very safe day. But you'll end up in these skin tracks. This is where the person in front of you has walked, and you'll follow their feet, and you'll basically glide up behind them. And it's very easy for the person behind you, but the first person in front has to break trail. And what can happen on big snow days, when everyone's excited, is that people can just follow the path of least resistance. And they will be following that skin track in front of them without thinking where they're going, and just following the easiest path, forgetting that that skin track has been laid in a time of day, or even like weeks before, when the avalanche risk, the safety profile, was very, very different on that face of the mountain. And because of that, they can get themselves in a lot of trouble and getting avalanches, and it's incredibly dangerous to do. What you have to do in that situation, when your old pattern has stopped working, is you have to break trail on a new skin path. This requires courage, and it requires a lot of effort. And it's the exact same thing for creating new mental pathways too, new neural pathways, the pathways in your brain. What we have to learn to do is break trail, and it requires courage, and it requires a lot of effort, and it requires some discipline to do that. But if you put the sets and reps in, you create new pathways that take you on a safer path, but be quicker path and more effective, and you become a more complete athlete. You become a more complete human being. You become a more complete business owner. If you would like to find out exactly how mentally fit you are, then fill out the Mental Edge Diagnostic. This is an assessment of your exact level of your mental fitness. There is a link below this video, and it's a great way to start your journey to increasing your mental fitness.